All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. For those of you that don't know, this is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we look at last night, we look at tonight, and we have a beautiful 5-gamer on deck today. I like it. I am hoping we get more news that will make it even more interesting, but I'm always hoping for that. Who knows if we actually get it? We even have like an interesting strategy we can have for the slate. So we'll dig into that a little bit. But first, let's look at last night. I blame myself for why I didn't have a great night last night, but it was still overall fine. Um, Octavius, good to see you. Zolo, awesome to have you in here. Thomas Dye, agreed. I have you as someone we need to shout out for sure. Dixon, you owe me everything you own. Uh, that's a joke from yesterday. Let's look at the starting lineup or the $100,000 winning lineup from yesterday. Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson was, if you watch the pre-lock show, which is for VIP members only, link in the description, Reggie Jackson was a focal point. I talked about him a lot last night. The thought process was Reggie Jackson plays a ton of minutes, and he plays a lot of minutes, and his usage rate is higher than a lot of the other crappy guards that you saw yesterday, like Conley and some other weird names. So Reggie Jackson was a priority for us. We had around 40 to 50% of him. Jordan Poole, Dixon, I see you. Don't be fooled. That wasn't the real Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole got there by points alone. He had 30 real life points last night and 34 actual DK points. To be honest, I wasn't significantly over the full field to Jordan Poole. I was around field weight. That was my plan. So he made the 100,000 lineup, but he really didn't do anything that special. If he would have done anything else besides just score, like maybe pass the ball a little bit or get a rebound, he could have had an explosive night. But, Jordan Poole doing Jordan Poole-like things. Norman Powell was a core play that made a lot of sense for him at 4,100. We talked about him a lot on the pre-lock show. I was not on Tatum. The matchup made a ton of sense, but I was prioritizing Jokic, and we all know what happened there, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But Jason Tatum made a ton of sense. We talk about it all the time, and we'll talk about it again on this slate. High total, soft matchup games. There's never any harm in taking shots on those low-owned studs in spots like that. It makes sense. It's fine to do that. Mark Williams, I had an exposure maximum on him around 30 or 40%. Was still significantly over the field, though, so that went well. Caruso wasn't on him. Miles Bridges had exposure to originally. He moved into the starting lineup. To be honest, I blame myself, again, for not going crazy here. I didn't feel like changing my lineups, to be honest, but I should have. We had a ton of coaches, though, at DFS Army who was telling you, hey, Miles Bridges is a core play. Madness said that, maybe Mutt. Upper Slad was in the chat telling everyone to play Miles Bridges, so that wasn't a surprise. So he even had decent ownership too, so a lot of ownership, so that made sense. Şengün, I wish showed up in my lines a bit more. He was in my earlier runs, but I think just because he was questionable and things like that, other guys showed up a bit more. So interesting, kind of weird to see, but solid slate. DFS Army member, but did you die though? Had a nice ROI, decent winnings there. So congrats to him. And then my guy Thomas Dye, who you all see in the chat all the time, crushed with his single entry lineup that he built by hand, by the way. Really impressive. Took down the fast break, nice $800,000. And then if you look closely at this, he got 33rd place in the 100K tournament. So out of 23,000 other lineups, he was able to get a top 33 line with just one lineup. That's really, really hard to do. I've done it before. I've taken it down with 20. If you can get that win with just one lineup, that's GOAT mode. Seriously. Let's see. What are you guys talking about? There's a lot of comments in here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm so glad people were cheering him on. That was awesome to see. Zolo said Poole is playing 2K in real life. Yeah, he's just like, hey, who cares about everyone else? Just shoot the ball up. What happened with Sam? White got ruled out. Sam is just let me double check before I lie, but he's a low usage player. So even when he sees minutes, he's going to need to be extremely efficient with his shots to really be able to have a high performing game. It was a spot that made sense if you played him, but he wasn't a priority for me. Really just because of that reason, low usage guy. But we'll play him again this season. Glad you got to Tatum, Thomas. Yeah, the Jokic ejection, I'm just not even going to talk about. It was just stupid. And yep, I did boost Fox a bit too. I had around 10%. So him underperforming didn't crush me, but it definitely would have been nicer if he did better. 2 days from blowouts. Yeah, blowouts have been tough. Any way to approach or play safer with blowout risk, or just roll the dice when it happens? Yeah, I do not change my approach and or try to predict blowouts. On occasion, I mean, I think usually naturally, you usually don't build your core around games with wide spreads. Usually those are games you want some one-off pieces, maybe a leverage play, things of that sort. They'll typically be lower owned in general. But outside of that, I don't try to predict it. It's usually going to hurt you more than it helps you, but it is frustrating. That's the annoying part. It's frustrating. But y'all, let's look at today's slate. When you just look at the totals of these games, you can pretty much tell what games we're prioritizing on this slate, games that we won't be prioritizing. The games that we love is this Pacers against the Hawks game, 251 spread, highest total on the slate, and only a 4-point spread. So ideally, this game stays close. The second game that we're going to be targeting is this Utah Jazz game against the Lakers. Again, nice total. Spread, 7.5. It's okay. But definitely want to target those two games. And then, per usual, we'll get our leverage plays, one-off plays from the other games on the slate. This is a nice 5-game slate. For me, when I see a 5-game slate, I'm thinking Christmas. Christmas is when we have 5 games and we have gigantic tournaments where usually we have nice payouts, and usually they're not that expensive on DraftKings either. So I just strategize a little bit, and it's just my warm up before we get to Christmas, when hopefully we're going to have some awesome takedowns. So let's jump into these games and go from there. Courtney, what's up? Said, how many core players should you have if only building a few lines? I would say at least 3, but it really depends on how many lines you're playing. But 3 is my usual number of guys I want at least 60% of or more. So, like I said, this Raptors against the Magic game is not the one you're going to want to play everyone from, but there will more than likely still be some guys that have strong performances here. The Orlando Magic have just been a solid defense this season. They've also just been playing at around an average pace. And so they're just not a team that you like to pick on very often. And so no one's really standing out for me too much. I have liked taking some shots on Scotty Barnes this season, but I don't foresee myself getting there this afternoon. Pascal Siakam's really the only guy who's standing out to me, and there's not really any other reason for that outside of the sim model. So thankfully, Siakam's pretty low owned, around 4.5%, and I'll probably be around, he'll probably be a leverage play for me today, so I'll probably be around double the field on him. The $8,200 price tag does help the situation a little bit, but I'm still not excited about playing any of these guys. Jakob Poeltl is worth a mention as well, with Wendell Carter Jr. being out and going up against Goga. It does make the matchup slightly easier, but it's still, Poeltl's not my favorite play on the slate by any means. But if I get a little bit of exposure, it's fine. But again, outside of those two, I'm not going to get a lot of guys from this game. Let's see. For the Magic, Fultz is still out. Wendell Carter Jr. is still out. Similar story. Don't like picking on the Raptors. Decent defense. Let's double check the pace. Yeah, and slow pace. So not the kind of team you like to pick on. Paolo Banchero, we keep talking about it. He's been in really good form as long as Fultz is out, which Fultz is out and Wendell Carter Jr. is playing. So it's hard for me to tell people not to play Paolo today. But if he stays around 10% ownership, I don't foresee myself getting above that, which on this slate just because of the matchup and because there's other guys I like a lot more on this slate. Franz Wagner, he's fine. He'll be in the mix. He'll be in a decent amount of my lineups. Another guy I will probably be around field weight, probably around 30%. Don't foresee myself getting much more of that because I don't want to pick on the Raptors too much. He's priced well. And again, increasing usage, Fultz, Carter Jr. are out. And so he's going to pop. He's going to be chalky. It wouldn't shock me if he ends up being in the Nuts lineup tonight. But it's, again, not a situation I want to go too crazy on. I don't foresee myself making him a core play unless we get some more news that makes it make a little bit more sense for me. And then, of course, you can take your shots on Suggs as well. And that's probably as much of the magic I want. No one I really want to go over the field on this team. Goga will be in the mix potentially, but again, not a guy I'm looking to prioritize. All right. Next up, we have a game that actually looks good. Let's see. Yeah, Ajax, Hauser and Wiggins, they were both awful yesterday. I mean, to be fair, Wiggins has been ass all season, so it's not that surprising, but yeah, glad I wasn't too high on them. Yeah, it's so weird because everyone played Jokic yesterday. A lot of people played him on Friday too, and he crushed. He did well, or maybe it was Thursday. I don't remember. But yesterday was like the inverse of that, where everyone played him and it went bad. To be honest, I would do the exact same thing. In sports, random things will happen, but the only thing you can control is having a consistent process. And my process pointed me towards Jokic, and so I was going to be around field weight every single time. I thought I was actually getting leverage on Jokic by being around 30%, but it was actually field weight, so it didn't really hurt me too much. Good to see you, Coach Chris. Courtney said, I'm playing 4 lines, so 3 core is fine. Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of having 3 core players that you trust a lot, and then you can just rotate other plays throughout those 4 lines. Usually when I 3-max, I usually don't like having one player in all of the lines, so I'll adjust that rotation up a little bit, but there's a lot of different ways of going about it. And 4 lines, you really, yeah, there's a lot of you can say about that. Kevin said, Jokic wasn't touted by the coaches yesterday. He was for me. Dixon said LaMelo the best PG in the East. You know, he's all right. He's all right. He's leaving, so I'm not too excited about him. But yeah, from like a DFS standpoint, he's been pretty solid. So looking at this game, we talked about it literally just minutes ago, looking at, I'm forgetting who it was, Tatum, the stud who's in the highest total game with a close spread and low ownership. That's exactly what Tyrese Halliburton is for me on this slate. In spots like this, I want exposure to a guy like Tyrese because there's not really anyone else on this team that is consistently producing for them. We have the streaky shooters like Hield, Brown, Mathurin, guys like this, who can definitely be in your mix, but the guy I want to make sure will be in my lineups tonight, Tyrese Halliburton. He's also a potential leverage play for me on this slate, so I'm considering going over on him. Miles Turner, again, I don't hate picking on the Hawks front court. I think it's a viable strategy, especially in a high total game. Miles Turner isn't the type of guy you can trust, though, to be honest. Let's see. He's 7,100. Likes to get into foul trouble. I just don't love the spot, but I think he's viable. So another guy that I'm okay getting exposure to, but I won't be exceeding 12% or whatever his ownership is by the time we get to lock. Bruce Brown is just a necessity on this slate. Nice high team total, nice game environment, 5,500. He helps things work, and he's been very involved offensively here recently. If you want a pivot, you have Buddy Hield and Benedict Mathurin. They're both, this whole group right here is viable for me. I want some exposure to them, but I don't have a lean one way or the other that I'm really trying to force here. And then the bench, the guys coming off the bench, I'm not trying to prioritize once again, but if they show up, they show up. The only guy I'm trying to force in the lineups here is Tyrese Halliburton. Gotta trust the DS. That sounds corny, but it's true. I don't like to overthink when I don't have to. OS said thoughts on Joe Ingles. To be honest, I haven't given him too much thought, but I'll look at him before the pre-lock show and we can talk about him. Dixon, why is Buddy Hield so bad? Yeah, that's exactly why. It's kind of similar to Jordan Poole. It's just that he's super shot dependent, and so when his three shot is falling, he crushes. When it's not, you're getting like a 20, 30 point performance from the few shots he was able to score that game. Disappointing. Bobby, I agree. Turner's GPP only. There's bigs that I am looking to prioritize on this slate. Turner's not one of them. Is there a correlation between Hallie Turner, kind of like a QB receiver? No, unfortunately, there's not great correlation in basketball. I know a lot of guys who've dug really deep into the space trying to find correlations, and they usually end up being losing players more often than winning. But again, if I'm never gonna crap on anyone's idea as long as it's working. So if you find something and you think there is a correlation there, it's fine. It's just usually not there in basketball. Man, small forward isn't good unless you're playing LeBron and Laurie or Barnes there. Yeah, similar. You kind of have to pay up at some of those spots to feel good about them. And I don't think you're thinking about it the wrong way. I do like both of those guys a good bit. Bay GPP core on FanDuel. I could see that. I need to look at his price tag though. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Just makes sense. So Kendrick, this is the domination station. This is the optimizer. And so, yeah, this is what I'm looking at. It does get updated throughout the day. When we get to the pre-lock show at 5:30 p.m., I always put the link in the Discord when I go live. B-Dubs will be on the show as well, Brandon, later today. And on that show, we show literally what we do in the domination station to make changes. You can also touch base with other DFS coaches as well who've had a lot of success, who have other strategies that's different than what I do as well. So a lot of different people you can get advice from there. But yeah, long story short, I like the Pacers. Not to spoil, but I also like the Atlanta Hawks tonight. I like the Hawks side of the ball with some of their extra pieces a bit more than the Pacers. So for the Pacers, I really only like Halliburton. He's the only one I'm forcing exposure to, whereas I'm more so willing to force exposure to some of these Hawks guys if I'm not getting exposure to them originally. And it looks like that's not an unpopular trend. It looks like a lot of people are looking to do that on this slate, which I'm fine with. We'll start off with Trae Young. Trae Young, I would like more if he was lower owned. At 9,100, without a ton of obvious value on this slate, I'm looking to pay down a bit more than I usually am. And so I'm prioritizing DeJounte Murray over Young because he's lower owned and because he's cheaper, and I like his upside just as much. I will still have exposure to Trae Young, though. I'm not trying to fade him in this spot, not getting overly creative, but I don't foresee myself going over the field on Trae Young, whereas I am willing to force that with DeJounte Murray on this slate. Jalen Johnson makes a lot work. He's 6,100. He plays a lot, decent usage rate. He makes sense. Fine to just put him in there. Not wanting to think about too much. Clint Capella, he's kind of like your best pay down option at center today. Not something I'm trying to do too much on this slate, but he's another one that just needs to be in your mix. After we get out of this range, we have Bogdanovich, Hunter, Okongwu, Bay, all viable. Let me look at Bay right quick. He's 4,600. Yeah, he stands out a good bit for me in the sim. When we look at Okongwu, we know what he can do. It's fine to have him in the mix. Hunter at 4,900. Glad his price is starting to be a little bit more realistic. He's still not standing out for me that much. So Hunter isn't someone that I'm going to go out of my way to prioritize on this slate. I want to be around field weight, not much higher than that. Bogdanovich at 5,600, I feel similarly about. He doesn't stand out for me as much as like a Bay, Okongwu, Capella, Johnson, Murray does. So Hunter and Bogdanovich are like the two Hawks I like the least. But again, I'm not fading them. I'm not Xing them out. Just not excited about them like I am Capella, Johnson, Okongwu, Bay. Kevin said I'm getting as much as 4 Hawks in the lineup in the DS. I'm totally fine with that. I see no issue with it. Again, it's early in the day, so like we're not gonna lock that in yet. Things might change, but for now, I'm totally comfortable with that. This is the game with the highest total on the slate by a long shot, and it's not even close. And it has a nice close spread. So when we get situations like that, that's when I'm okay with sticking everyone together. Zolo, you need to get out of my head, man. You and B Dubs, I used to think I had original thoughts, and I'm realizing I don't as much anymore. Jared said, got super lucky last minute, thrown together lineup, overtime. Boston Charlotte was a booster. Awesome, man. Glad it worked out. Bobby, I like Jalen Johnson today. He's only 6,100. He does a lot for this team. They like him being out there, and so I'm comfortable getting however much I get of him today. If we don't get any more news, decent chance he ends up being a core play for me today. Yeah, I hate when players do stuff like that. We are funding how much money they make, I'm sure, somehow. But Dixon, it hurts a little bit, but we got to move past it. He doesn't care about my parlay, but he can still make me some money. So he doesn't have to care about it as long as he's out there doing well. Yeah. Early run's fine. It's fine. It wasn't really advice for you, Kevin. I know you run and you do well, but it's more so other people. I don't want them to be like, oh no, we're locking in lines already. Zolo, agreed, man. Agreed. So yeah, I like the Hawks and I like the Pacers. Nothing too crazy there. This next game is interesting, mostly only because Donovan Mitchell's ruled out. If Donovan Mitchell was playing, this would have been a pretty easy team for me to write off. But when Donovan Mitchell is out, we've seen these guys get hot. The tough part is that this is a tough matchup against the Sixers, good defense. But the spread isn't as wide as you would expect. I was expecting kind of like a wide spread like the Portland Suns game has, but it's only 7.5. The total is still pretty low because these are two defensive teams. With Jared Allen back, this Cleveland team has proven they are solid defensively. They even slowed down Jokic over the weekend. So they're not unbeatable, but slow pace, tough defense, not a team you want to pick on for both sides. But Donovan Mitchell's out. Darius Garland gets a nice boost. Evan Mobley also sees a nice increase in usage. Evan Mobley's really been the only one taking advantage of that usage, though. I am not going to be as high on Evan Mobley as the rest of the field. I'll probably, if I get a ton of him showing up in my lines, I'll probably be around 30 to 40%, which is still going to be significantly, or is still going to be over the field by a little bit. But I don't want him to be a core play for me tonight because I just don't love this matchup against Embiid and crew on the Sixers. The exact same story for Jared Allen. They both project well, but I don't like the matchup for them. So I'll still allow myself to get over the field, but they won't be core plays for me on the slate. Worry about foul trouble. Foul trouble in tough matchup is going to make for harder scoring. But they can definitely still get there given their price tag. So that's why I'm not completely fading them. Bobby, I'm glad someone was excited to play Garland. I feel like so many people have talked about how Garland's on their do not play list here lately. But he has been better. And yeah, exactly. Evan Mobley can get the board. So I'm not Xing him out, but I'm not as excited about them as you might see in other places. Guys that I am keeping a close eye on, though, is Karis LeVert is questionable. If he's out, that's a really nice boost to Max Strus. And you all might hate me for it, but I'm more willing to play Dean Wade if Karis LeVert is out. So I'll have exposure to Mobley, Garland, Allen. I'm willing to go over the field on Garland, and I'm willing to make Max Strus and Dean Wade leverage plays if Karis LeVert is out. If Karis LeVert plays, I'll have some Karis LeVert exposure and Max Strus exposure, but I'll be a little bit less excited about it. Wouldn't plan on getting too much Dean Wade either way. Dean Wade, man, so bad sometimes. He just runs the entire game, the definition of a cardio guy. John, what is the first taco? I feel like I'm missing something here. Embiid is the first taco, or the first to go, maybe. I don't know. OS said, what are some good shooting guard plays? Not shooting guard / point guard. we'll see. If we run out of time, I have to only do it for the pre-lock show. You think LeVert plays? Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. Yeah, I mean, I think Wade can be. We've seen his shot fall, and that's really all we're hoping for. In a matchup against the Sixers, it's tough, but it's usually harder on the front court guys. We've seen shooters be able to perform decently, so I'm not really going there unless LeVert is out. But worth thinking about at least. Oh, I don't play Prize Picks, guys, but one day, one day. What's up, Mo? Good to see you. No worries. Hope you're doing well. What's up, Kanger? What about Porter Jr. if Levert misses? Interesting. Interesting. So for me, what I usually do, and we can do it on the pre-lock show, I usually run some. I run different things to see like who sees an increase in usage, who sees an increase in DK points when Levert is out. We can run that on the pre-lock show, but we don't have time for that on this one. Only have 30 minutes. For the Sixers, Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid. We know what he can do. He's matchup proof, but this is still a tough matchup for him and a low game total. So not my favorite spot. I was hoping he was going to be lower owned than even 8% on a 5-game slate. And so that would have made me more willing to maybe have like a 5% min on him or 10%. Honestly, I'm on the fence. I keep going back and forth on if I want to play Embiid, and I keep landing on no each time. So it makes me nervous, but I'm probably not going to have a ton of Embiid tonight, which sucks. But we'll see. That could change. I'm more willing to play Maxey, Harris, or Melton. Again, this isn't a great matchup for them, but they've all been in really good form recently, even when no one's out. And so they're more viable for me on this slate at the lower price tag than Embiid. It's just hard to pay up for Embiid on this slate unless you're just playing some real randos. A potential really sneaky and weird play that's not going to sound good to anyone is Nicholas Batum at 4,300. Again, Batum's just one of those guys who's getting the minutes right now, and he's cheap. And so he makes things work, and he is a low usage guy, low points per minute guy. So you need him to actually score a little bit in this game to be able to exceed value. But I think it's worth taking a shot on him at extremely low ownership. Again, not a core play, but maybe like a small leverage play, having like a 5-10% min on a guy like that really just automatically makes your lineups extremely different. And you can pay up for guys like Halliburton and Embiid that you might not be able to typically. It's looking like that, Big T, because it's just one of the lower total games and the spread's pretty wide. And they're all healthy. Whereas with the Cleveland side of the game, it's a low total, but at least Donovan Mitchell's out, For the Trailblazers, this team has been looking bad here recently, which is why this spread is so wide. Looking like it's probably going to be a blowout, but I'm willing to take a shot on DeAndre Ayton. He's been solid here lately. Suns don't scare me from a defensive standpoint up front, and so I'm totally comfortable playing DeAndre Ayton at 2%. And almost guarantee he'll be a leverage play for me on this slate. Brogdon's fine. I prefer to prioritize other guards on the slate, though. Yeah, don't like too many of these guys besides Ayton. Suns, you can make an argument for Durant and Booker here. I feel like we've been playing Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen to some extent for a long time. These guys are all priced well. I'm not fading them, but this is another spot, kind of like the earlier games, where I'm not trying to go crazy here and exceed the projected ownership. Because the spread is so wide, this does feel like there's a decent chance of a blowout here. Zello, can we call it a revenge game for Nurkic? Because I feel like he should be happy he left. I feel like things have only gotten better for him. So if anything, he might want to take it easy. If they get up 15, 20 points, he's like, all right, I'll let y'all have it. You gave me a much better situation. I wouldn't say Maxey is like such a good play. I just think he's a slightly better play than Embiid on this slate just because he's a little bit cheaper. But I don't love any of the Sixers tonight. It's the price tag, and there's better spots on the slate. Like we've already talked about the Hawks and Pacers game. That's where everyone's going to focus their guard exposure on, especially. And so just due to that, Maxi's not going to show up as often. Maxi's a fine play, but it's hard to compare him to the Pacer Hawks guys. Ooh, Dixon. See, now that's a revenge narrative I can get behind. I forgot. This is Ayton's first time returning to Phoenix. I was on him, and you just made me like him even more. Oh, you meant Halliburton. It's because he's expensive, and we don't have a lot of pay down options or value plays on this slate. So because of that, he's just going to be lower owned. And also, we have quite a few studs on this slate, so it's pretty easy to spread out ownership on them and not just go heavy on one guy. When you 150, it's a lot easier to get leverage. Whereas if you're only playing one lineup, you can only pick one. Jeremy preseason Nurkic. Okay. I wonder if Brandon will be on the pre-lock show later today. I wonder if he's on them as well. If you both are on him and Zolo, y'all might be able to convince me. But right now, I'm not doing it. I'm playing Ayton tonight, guys. I like Booker a little bit more than Durant today. Durant's 10K. He's a little bit more expensive. He's higher owned. Booker, his minutes have been increasing. He's been playing a decent amount. Like, I'm not worried about minutes limits or anything here. That's no longer an issue for him. Soft matchup and the lowest owned here. Again, the guard spots, we're getting a lot of those guys showing up in that Pacers-Hawks game and even some of the Lakers later after this game. But Devin Booker's one of those guys I just don't want to forget about. But again, I don't foresee myself getting more than 20% of a guy like Devin Booker tonight because of the spots I like more. Pacers, Lakers, Hawks, Utah, those games. So I want some, but I don't want to go crazy. And the spread is wide, so the chance of a blowout is high, and those guys will be out. Guys, I know you all don't like Ayton. I get it. It's fine. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree. Even Jarrett's like Nurkic over Ayton. Guys, it's fine. It's fine. I might have some Nurkic. You guys are almost getting me on board, but I'm playing Ayton. I will have at least some Ayton. That's a guarantee. Lauri Markkanen for the Jazz, Clarkson for the Jazz, John Collins for the Jazz. None of them are all that expensive. All are in good spots against this Lakers team. This is the second highest total game on the slate, 7.5 point spread. I honestly can't get enough of these guys. I really like Markkanen here at 8,400. This is a decent price for him. He's not getting too much ownership at 20% on a 5-game slate. That's not wild to me. So I'm willing to match the field on him there. Jordan Clarkson has been fantastic. He's been so good. And he's really taken on a lot of the offensive duties for this team. The biggest concern for the Jazz right now is they need to fix themselves on defense. And I don't know if they have anyone who can actually do that. But just because Kessler's out, we've seen John Collins really step up his game a good bit, and Kelly O a little bit as well. Kelly O and Keontae George are pretty low owned. Keontae George is still a pretty low usage guy. Where is he at? Around 18%. So it has been trending upwards since he first moved into the starting lineup. So he's fine to have in the mix, but not a guy I'm trying to prioritize on this slate. Kelly O at 5K, he's fine. But again, the guys I'm really looking to prioritize are the more obvious and clear guys to play here, which are John Collins, Clarkson, and Markkanen. Outside of that, I'm just going to let the DS do its thing and add in the guys that it feels like it wants to. But if it gets too crazy and wild, I'm going to have to calm it down. But I do think Kelly O, THT, Collins, Sexton are all viable to have in your lineups. I think guys like Agbaji and Fontecchio are a little bit more thin plays that I'm not trying to get too much of, but if they show up a little bit, not the end of the world. Let's see. Yeah, put me in the game. I get it. It's Lauri is one of those guys that I don't pick on. I don't choose too often. The sim model almost never likes him, and that's one of the reasons for it. But I get prioritizing Clarkson and LeBron. I think that's totally fine. Interesting, Mr. 5. All right. I don't think that's a bad approach. For me, I'm just playing Ayton, but we'll see about Grant. We'll see. I'll look a little bit closer. AD is playing hurt. He's not 100%. Mo agrees with you, Mr. Five. All right. Yeah, AD is playing hurt. He's been a little banged up. He's trying to power through. But fun fact, his numbers haven't really been that different from before his injury to now. So there's obviously a small difference here. So in the games he played before his injury, he had 23.9 points per game and 12 rebounds per game with a 24.4% usage rate. Since returning, he's averaged 19.8 points per game, which is still a decrease, and around 11.3 rebounds per game with a 25.9% usage rate. You could really play with the stats here and say, actually, since returning from his injury, he's had an increase in usage rate, so he's an even better play. That's stupid. That's not true. He's not as aggressive scoring lately, which is not what you want to see. And if he was just as popular as LeBron was tonight, I probably wouldn't play AD. But because he's the lowest owned Laker on this team and his stats aren't that different for me, since pre-injury, AD is going to be a leverage play for me on this slate. I will be double the field on AD, and it's just going to be that way for me. AD is the glass man. Street clothes. You got to love it. When is AD not hurt? Yeah, great points, guys. Great points. But hopefully not tonight. And at low ownership at 9,700, willing to go double the field on him at least. And I like the spot. LeBron James, talk about it all the time. He's just been really good recently. I can't even say that it's only the primetime games because he crushed in the last game too. But luckily enough, this is a primetime game for them tonight. It will be on national TV, so that kind of fits that narrative. LeBron James is questionable tonight, so I guess we do have to be concerned about that. But it's kind of like with AD, when is LeBron not questionable at this point? I'm going to play him tonight, and if he ends up not playing, then we'll have to pivot. It'll probably force people to play a bit more Markkanen as well. But all in all, assuming he plays, I'll probably be around field weight. I don't think I'll go much higher than that, whereas with AD, I'm willing to go over. When it comes to the guards with Russell and Reeves and even Reddish and Rui, these guys are fine. I don't feel one way or the other with them. If I get exposure to them naturally in the DS, that's cool. But I don't want to force the issue of any of these guys tonight. I would really just prefer a nice mixture here. Good question, Lopez. So when I say double the field, it's looking at the projected ownership, which is this column right here, which you might not be able to see that well. Sorry. Which is 9.62% ownership. And so if that stays by the time we get to the pre-lock show, I'll probably be at around 20% ownership on a guy like that, because that's what a leverage play means for me, is I'm going to get leverage over the field with a guy like Anthony Edwards. THT revenge, Clarkson revenge, a lot of former team spots. Yeah, it's an interesting slate. I like it. I really do like this slate. And I think there's enough low-owned pieces that I can get natural leverage. And then I like to let the domination station do the rest of the work outside of that. I focus on leverage plays. The DS focuses on the rest of the plays. And then from there, I look at the lineups and make adjustments based off of guys I think it's too high on or too low on. And that's literally what we do on the pre-lock show. I'm a Lakers fan. If this is the first time playing LeBron tonight, he better go crazy like he's been doing. That is one of my biggest concerns with this ownership tonight. It feels like everyone is playing LeBron tonight. And again, it's a great matchup, great total. But that's why I'm just going to be around field weight. And field weight is, right now we have him projected for around 30% ownership. I'm going to be around 30% ownership. I don't want to go higher than that. I don't want to be below it. I don't feel great about. I'm questioning the situation a little bit because it just feels too good to be true. But that's kind of why I'm have AD as a leverage play, just to kind of get a little bit different off the LeBron chalk. But again, I'll still have LeBron in my lineups. OS said, where do you think Levine gets traded to? I have no idea, OS. I'm just here for the insanity. I love it when trades start to happen. Lopez said, follow up. So would your min exposure be 18 if the field is 9? Yeah, exactly. Exactly what I would have as a leverage play for AD. I usually tend to just do 1 over and do 20 just to kind of make it the full picture in my mind. But 18 is totally fine as well. LeBron's always chasing some type of goal or something. So I'm sure he is. Mo, I think it's on TV tonight. So LeBron, exactly. That does make me feel better. It is a nationally televised game tonight on TNT, so should go well. Courtney, core plays are not the same as leverage plays. Every now and again, they can overlap. So again, like leverage plays, AD 9%, 20% min on him if ownership stays the same, then that would be a leverage play, but that's not enough for AD to be a core play. Core plays for me are typically my top 5 highest owned players, typically guys that I'm at least 60% or over on for that given slate. So that means I have around 60% or higher of that player. So in the case of Anthony Davis, if I only have 20%, that's leverage over the field, but that's not him being a core play for me. So yeah, guys, I feel like this slate in a nutshell is Lakers, Utah, Pacers, Hawks. Outside of that, we're just mixing and matching guys that we think can go off at lower ownership because everyone's focusing on these 2 games for the right reason. Typically on 5-game slates, there's one game that you can completely avoid, and then there's another game where it's significantly under-owned and you probably would have wanted exposure to it. Again, I don't hyper focus on that. I still stick to my strategy of focusing on leverage plays and letting the domination station do the rest of the work and then making the adjustments I want to. But still a philosophy I like to keep in mind, just given the past Christmas Day slates we've had before in the past. And yes, if you all could hit the smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. If you want to check out the pre-lock show later today and see any other DFS Army VIP content, don't forget you can sign up for that with the link below. Feel free to use the promo code BOB for a 10% discount. But appreciate you, Dave, as well. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Hope you all make some money later tonight. And I'll be back tomorrow, and Brandon and I will be around for the pre-lock show. So I will see you all later. Have a good one. Peace out. Bye, guys.